Dennis Collins was associated with Gas Monkey Garage when it was one of the most famous automotive brands in America. And then one day the relationship ended. The details of exactly how and why have never been fully told publicly. What has been told publicly by collectors, by the automotive community, by anyone who's watched what Dennis Collins has done since, is that whatever happened, it might have been the best thing that ever happened to him. Because Dennis Collins today is worth an estimated $30 million. And he built that without Richard Rawlings. A lot of people only know Dennis Collins as the car guy who showed up on a television show. And if that's where the story ends for you, you're dramatically underselling what this man actually does for a living. Collins isn't a builder in the traditional hot rod sense, and he's not the one pulling engines apart at 2 in the morning with grease under his fingernails. What he does, and what he does better than almost anyone working in the American collector car world, is find vehicles that nobody else can locate. Rare vehicles, forgotten vehicles, classic cars sitting in barns and private estates and storage units that haven't seen daylight in 30, 40, sometimes 50 years, and that combination of instincts takes decades to develop and cannot be faked by someone who doesn't genuinely carry it. Collins understands provenance the way a serious art dealer understands brushwork. Not just what something is worth today, but what its documented history makes it worth, what paperwork gives it weight, and which buyers anywhere in the country will pay the most for it. His entire adult life has run through the car business, operating out of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and long before Gas Monkey Garage became a television production, Collins was already building a reputation in collector circles that had nothing to do with cameras or branding or anyone else's name. He was finding vehicles that other people had walked past, doing deals quietly, stacking credibility one transaction at a time. The car that Dennis Collins surfaced in 2023 and sold for a number that stunned even veteran collectors is coming up at the 6-minute mark. Fast and Loud was a phenomenon during its peak years on the Discovery Channel, pulling millions of viewers per episode and turning Gas Monkey Garage into something far larger than a Dallas shop, a lifestyle brand, a merchandise operation, a name that people who had never touched a wrench still recognized and responded to. Dennis Collins appeared throughout that run as someone who brought vehicles in, barn finds, rare classics. The raw material that fueled the builds and flips the show was built around. On television, that role can read as a supporting part, almost secondary to the fabrication and the personality at the center of it, but what it actually represented was the entire front end of the business model. No finds, no builds. No builds, no show. Richard Rawlings understood branding the way very few people in the automotive world ever have, and Gas Monkey grew into exactly that kind of machine. Merchandise, licensing deals, a name with reach far beyond the garage itself. Collins was embedded in that world during some of its most visible years, and then he wasn't. To be fair, the Gas Monkey relationship is complicated, and there are things neither side has put on record in any detail, so this stays with what can actually be verified. What can be verified is that Dennis Collins' involvement with that show came to an end. What's also on record is that Collins, in interviews since, has been measured about the whole thing. Not bitter, not particularly effusive, just someone who has clearly moved forward and done so with real decisiveness. Rawlings hasn't addressed Collins specifically in any detailed public way that fills in the picture. The specifics of how the professional arrangement ended, whether it was a business decision, a creative disagreement, or simply a working relationship that ran its course, none of that is documented in a way that makes it fair to present as settled fact. What is documented unambiguously, with auction results and verifiable sales as the evidence, is everything Dennis Collins built once he was on his own. And that is the story worth telling here. Because here's the thing nobody talks about. Most people who leave a platform like Gas Monkey Garage either fade from view or land in smaller operations, and the reason that happens is almost always the same. The brand was doing more of the heavy lifting than they realized, and without it, the momentum disappears. The audience turns out to be loyal to the show, not to the individual, and most people recalibrate downward from there. Collins went in the opposite direction entirely. Without cameras telling him what to find or when to find it, he went back to doing what he had always done, and that freedom suited him in ways the television arrangement never could have. The classic cars he surfaced after leaving, and the prices those cars commanded at auction, tell that story more clearly than anything else could. Collins built his operation, Collins Bros, into a serious high-end dealership and brokerage in the collector car market, not a television spin-off or a novelty act, but a real force dealing in rare American muscle cars. The years since his Gas Monkey association ended have produced some of the most notable collector car finds to move through the community, and the numbers attached to those sales are where the $30 million figure starts to make sense. Numbers matching. Fully documented first-generation muscle cars carrying complete provenance have moved through auction under his name at figures well into the six figures, and results like that don't arrive by accident. They arrive because the person sourcing the vehicle knows exactly which documentation matters to serious buyers, knows which auction house to run it through, and knows how to present a car in a way that pulls competitive bidding from multiple directions at once. Shelby Mustangs, rare Chevelles, original high-performance Camaros with documentation most buyers would assume no longer exists. These are the kinds of vehicles Collins surfaces repeatedly, and when his name is attached to a car, the collector community treats that association as a form of authentication in itself. What's the most valuable thing you've ever found unexpectedly? Drop it in the comments because some of the stories people are sitting on from their own garages and attics are genuinely extraordinary. His reputation has become, across these years, the asset itself, separate from any individual car, separate from any single transaction, and worth more than any one sale could account for on its own. The YouTube channel isn't incidental to the business at this point because it sits at the center of it. Videos documenting barn finds, estate purchases, and rare car discoveries pull strong, consistent numbers, and more than the view counts themselves, they pull the right audience. Collectors, serious enthusiasts, people who are actually in the market for what Collins sells. The production doesn't carry the slick, high-energy editing of a major television show, and that's not a weakness because it's what makes the channel function the way it does. The audience that finds Dennis Collins on YouTube skews toward people who understand what a numbers-matching drivetrain actually means, who know why a window sticker changes a muscle car's value at auction, who care about the difference between a tribute vehicle and the documented original. Fast and Loud drew casual viewers who responded to spectacle and personality, and there's nothing wrong with that. Rawlings built something real with that audience. Collins built a smaller audience in raw numbers, but a more commercially concentrated one, and he did it the same way he's always done everything, by being the most knowledgeable person in the room and letting that knowledge carry the full weight. The Gas Monkey model was built around a brand, and it worked because Rawlings understood something most people in the automotive world miss, that in a television and media environment, personality and brand identity can outperform any individual technical skill. The garage was almost secondary to the show, and the show was almost secondary to the brand itself. None of that is a criticism. It's a genuine business insight, and it was executed well. Dennis Collins represents a different model entirely, one where the expertise is the brand, where no television network is required, no merchandise line, no licensing deal, just being, verifiably and repeatedly, the best at what you do and letting the track record accumulate over time. That tension between the two approaches plays out constantly in the automotive world and in every creative industry, and it doesn't resolve into a single right answer for everyone. What Collins' story adds to that conversation is a specific and measurable data point. When the larger platform was gone, his value didn't disappear with it. It clarified. The skills, the finds, the deals, the provenance work, the client relationships, all of it survived the transition and, by every number available, grew faster once the platform was no longer part of the equation. Real expertise travels with the person who built it. A title can be removed, a professional relationship can close, a platform can end, but the skill belongs to whoever spent the decades earning it. $30 million is a number that gets attention, and that's part of why it's in the title. But the more telling number is the years it took to reach it. Not a year or two following a departure from television, but a full career built on finding what others missed, reading value that others walked past, and maintaining a reputation that outlasted every platform along the way. Rawlings built something worth respecting too, and Gas Monkey Garage is a genuine American success story that deserves to be recognized as one. But the idea that Collins needed that association to succeed, that without Gas Monkey there was no version of this, has been answered by the $30 million he built without it. The specific barn find that best captures what separates Collins from everyone else working in this space, the one that moved through auction in 2023 at a number the collector community was still discussing weeks later, is linked in the description. And if this kind of story is what you're here for, subscribe now, because the next video in this series covers another automotive figure who built something serious in the shadow of a much bigger name, and it's worth your time.